Oh, Michael is on. Hello, everyone. Can you see us? Can you hear
Yes, we
us?
can, but it's a bit slow. It's lagging.
Alice, Michael.
It's lagging behind.
Hello, yes,
Yes.
good afternoon, everyone. Tashi delay,
Okay,
Geishila.
we're doing our best
Yeah,
here.
yes, thank you.
Okay, that's it. We're doing our best. The rest is up. To our center. It's so cold. It's biting cold in Bangalore, and still all of you came to listen to Geshe-la today. We are in the fifth session of the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, and we are going to continue this. And tomorrow in the morning, we're doing the Bodhisattva way of life. Thank you so much for coming and teaching us, Geshe-la. As you can see, our congregation is really growing, one person by one person, but it takes, I know, a great deal of time and patience. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, as Diti mentioned, we are continuing our discussion on uh, the mind training uh, techniques. So we had a few sessions on the Bodhisattvas, Joel Garland, which is a text authored by Natisha, a short text. Uh, and what we're going to do now is discuss another text from the mind training tradition, The Wheel of Sharp Weapons, composed by a teacher uh, uh, called Acharya Dharma who was actually Lama Atisha's, Dipankar Atisha's teacher, one of the several teachers. And so Venerable Leg then told me that he discussed the lineage of this text in the previous session. So just to kind of revise it briefly. So this text is authored by Acharya Dharma, who was Dipankaratisha's teacher. And then Lamatisha brought this text, or the teachings from this text, to Tibet. So all of you know that Lamatisha was the person who reformed, who was considered to have reformed Buddhism in Tibet. Buddhism was already established in Tibet several centuries before Lamatisha reached Tibet, but it hadn't kind of been firmly established. So there are certain things that were still deficient, and Lamatisha then made sure that it was firmly established. And then his students, his disciples, carried on this mind training lineage. So the first major disciple of Lama Atisha, who furthered the mind training tradition, was his main disciple called Drontompa. And then it passed on from Drontompa to other Tibetan teachers, and it's been preserved in Tibet for a long time. So the original text was composed in Sanskrit, but the Sanskrit root is lost. So all we have is the Tibetan version of the text, and now it's been translated into English. And there are different versions of the translations available. So is this the version that we're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So we'll go through the verses. So before we get down to a proper discussion of the text's contents, let's just do a short meditation. And what we'll do is we'll try and kind of go through some of the points that are discussed in this text as part of the meditation. So essentially, what the text does is it identifies the causes for the suffering that we experience. And the main cause that has been identified in the text is this thing called a self-cherishing attitude. So that's the main enemy that is identified and then described in the text. So, and then the text talks about how self-cherishing is at the root of all our suffering, and how the self-cherishing attitude is itself rooted in a self-grasping attitude. And then the law of karma kind of works upon the self-cherishing attitude in combination with the self-cherishing attitude. And then karma, along with self-cherishing attitude and the self-grasping that it is rooted in, together bring about all the suffering experiences that we have in our lives. So the text identifies these things first, self-cherishing as the root of our suffering, and then it talks about how the law of karma operates. So these are the causal factors that are identified in the text. And then the text kind of takes us through some of the practices that we need to develop or cultivate as preparation to build on the more advanced mind training techniques that are introduced in the text. So some of these things that are introduced in the text, it talks about how we should identify, or rather look upon any kind of adversity that we experience. Not look on adversity as a mere experience of suffering, but look upon it as an opportunity, as a teacher, for us to first of all investigate why we've come about to experience that suffering, and how we can use that suffering experience to adapt ourselves internally, psychologically, and then transform these adversities into opportunities to develop on the spiritual path. It also kind of then talks about another level of preparation that we need to do is reframing some of the emotional responses that we automatically kind of trigger in response to the adverse situations that we encounter. And then it talks about how we can combine these two preparatory practices to enhance your practice of, or rather enhance the possibility of us cultivating the mind of enlightenment, of bodhicitta. So this text is essentially a presentation of the concepts that are introduced in Bodhicharya Avatar by Acharya Shantideva, where he presents a technique to cultivate bodhicitta, which is slightly different from what is introduced by other teachers. So Acharya Shantideva talks about how bodhicitta can be cultivated using this technique called exchanging of self and others. So how we need to invest in changing the referent of our cherishing attitude from the present self to others. Yeah. So the wheel of sharp weapons actually talks about how that can be done. So it's kind of a preparatory practice, ultimately leading to the cultivation of bodhicitta. So that's the general kind of outline of the text. So
Venerable, is the wheel of sharp weapons symbolic of recycling the birds in samsara?
okay, the wheel of sharp weapons actually is a reference to the destructive wheels that we set into motion through our actions which are inspired and driven by afflictions. So our present actions, if they're driven, rooted, inspired by afflictions, like anger or jealousy, pride, or attachment, desire, clinging, grasping, ultimately these afflictions then lead to karmic actions which are not wholesome. And those karmic actions then create a potency or a mind stream which gets triggered in the future if it's not attended to, and then is presented back to us in the form of some sort of adverse situation that we experience or painful experience that we have in the future. So the wheel is kind of spun by our afflicted actions, unwholesome actions, and then it kind of reverts back, comes back to you. So it's like a boomerang, or maybe the chakra that you are familiar with.
It's like what goes around.
Yes, and it comes. Yes. Yes, yes.
And it is this thing on it. And it is used to cut me through the application, ignorance and all the other applications.
Yes, yes.
So it was actually a weapon.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, there are two different connotations, and here too it is used also specifically in this sense, where when it goes and comes back and presents you with all these painful experiences, with proper kind of psychological preparation and adaptation, you can convert that adversity, that adverse painful experience into a learning experience, which furthers your development on the spiritual path. So it brings about some fresh insights, it brings about some fresh wisdom, and that helps you then advance on the path. So it's used even in that sense. So it cuts through with fresh wisdom, it cuts through your solid, more kind of lasting, abiding afflictions in your mind stream. Yeah? The thicket of afflictions in your mind stream. Okay, so we'll discuss the outline in a little more detail. I just wanted to give you a brief outline. Some parts of the outline is what we'll concentrate on while doing the meditation. So as part of the meditation, what I want you to do is just look into some of your experiences, look into your mental continuum, and see how in what different kinds of aspects this self-cherishing attitude that we have manifests. Yeah. So pick up some experiences that you've had in the past, in the recent past, or could be even in the distant past, and see how the self-cherishing attitude that is present in our mental continuum that manifests, and it takes on different kinds of forms. So I'll give you some guidance during the meditation. Yeah. So let's start the meditation. So make sure that you have a proper posture. Keep your back erect, arms relaxed. Okay. Okay. Rest. Okay. Keep your right palm in the left palm and the tip of the thumbs touching each other. Rest your palms in your lap just below the navel. And shoulders straight, chin slightly tucked in, and rest your tongue, the tip of the tongue, just behind the upper row of teeth. And you can keep your eyes closed, or if they're half open, then you can direct the gaze of your eyes just in the space in front of you. Just gazing down the tip of your nose. And then take a moment to just pause all the stories that are running through your mind right now, mental continuum. Anything that does not pertain to what we are going to discuss today in this session, park those thoughts. Take a few minutes to just enhance your concentration. Use the breath as an object to help you with your concentration. So just observe your in-breath and the out-breath. So track your in-breath, the entire body of the in-breath as it enters the nose through whichever nostril. Could be the right, left, or could be both. So just observe the in-breath. Goes through the nostril, then through the throat, through your chest, and then watch it reverse into the out breath, and then track the entire body of the out breath as it goes through the chest, throat, and then is expelled out through the nostrils. Then, as I said, this maybe think about all the different ways in which self-cherishing attitude manifests in our conduct, in our behavior. Every now and then, it manifests in different forms. So it has various kind of aspects, different kinds of dimensions. So you could say it manifests as some sort of defensiveness, emotional defensiveness. For example, if somebody at work, a colleague of yours, suggests improving suggest some way to improve your work, then you automatically kind of defend your work by saying that there's nothing wrong with it, and you do not accept that suggestion with the constructiveness that it needs to be attended with. So you feel kind of attacked and you snap when the colleague makes a suggestion like that. So self-cherishing is in play there in the form of this emotional defensiveness that you experience. It could manifest as some sort of an egoic justification. So, for example, if you're driving and then you cut someone off in traffic, and then you kind of justify that action, which is not the right action, by saying that they were slow anyway, the people behind you, or you deserve to be kind of ahead of them because you got some important work to attend to. So you start rationalizing your wrong action. So that's another example of the second dimension of self-cherishing, some sort of an egoic justification. It could manifest as a sense of entitlement. So you go to some place like, let's say, a government office, and you need to file some form there, and there are lots of people waiting in the queue. But you feel that you are kind of entitled to skip the line and be brought right at the front and the top of the line at the head of the queue, because your work, your time is more precious. So your self-cherishing manifests in the form of this kind of a sense of entitlement. It could manifest as some sort of a self-preoccupation. So every conversation that you have with your friends or your colleagues at work, every conversation, you'll find that there's a tendency for you to steer those conversations back to your own achievements, thinking constantly about how events affect you. So the colleague may be kind of talking about somebody else's achievement, but you feel the urge to kind of interrupt and remind the group about your achievements. So while the conversation is happening, you're preoccupied with yourself. So self-cherishing attitude manifests in the form of self-preoccupation. It manifests in this tendency of wanting to compare and compete with others, needing some sort of validation from others all the time. So for example, if your friend's been promoted, or maybe he's been rewarded for some work that he or she has done, you feel jealous about the friend's achievement, friend's promotion. And you kind of feel that you would have been able to do a better job if you were in his or her place. So self-cherishing manifests, takes on this form of wanting to compare, wanting to compete, needing validation all the time. It could also take on the aspect of lack of empathy, so inability to empathize with other people's difficulties, their sorrows, their pain, their suffering. So if some friend of yours or your work colleague is describing how it's been a particularly bad day or particularly bad week at work, and he or she is explaining the reasons why it's been a bad day or a tough day, you kind of cut in. You say that your week or your day has been worse. So you're in a way minimizing the other person's, the friend's stress by saying that my week was worse or my day was worse. So self-cherishing could manifest in this inability to empathize. It could manifest in this tendency or this urge to interpret all events through the prism, through the mirror of me and mine. So if somebody happens to validly criticize your work, then you end up thinking, how dare that person disrespect me? Or if somebody happens to cut in the line, you're standing in a queue and somebody happens to cut the line, you immediately respond, react by thinking that how dare that person disrespect me. So it's possible that that person actually has some sort of a emergency to attend to, and is very justified in seeking an exception, jumping the queue. But yet, your self-cherishing attitude wants you to interpret that experience through this prism, through this mirror of me and mine. So everything is about me and mine. So these are some different ways, different aspects in which this self-cherishing attitude manifests. So just peer into your experiences and then think about, pick up a situation where self-cherishing attitude has manifested in one of these different ways in your recent past. And then bring to mind the recent situation where you felt irritated with something or irritated at someone, disappointed with some result, some development. You were criticized by somebody for something that you didn't do properly, or you were emotionally hurt. And then think about how just your ego kind of reacted when you had that experience. It would have thought, the ego would have reacted in the form of wanting to be right in that situation. And if you're frustrated in your effort to be right, you felt irritated. Maybe you were craving for more attention and you were deprived of the attention and you felt irritated. Somebody was directing some blame towards you and you wanted to avoid that blame and you felt irritated. Or you just wanted things to be different and they took on a different form and you felt irritated or disappointed or emotionally hurt. So just invoke that experience, think about that experience. And then gently recognize that there's a pattern there. So this is my pattern. This is how, this is the form that my reactions take. And it is because there's a self that I conceive of that I want to protect. So this is my pattern. This is the self I want to protect. It's not about shaming oneself. There's no shaming involved here. Just an observation. And you need to be honest with your observations. Think about these emotional patterns, these reaction patterns that you have. So it's this pattern that the wheel of sharp weapons calls self-cherishing. So identify this pattern. Now go back to the experience that you had, the adverse experience that you had, of either irritation, disappointment, emotional hurt. And then ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? Is there some learning that I can derive from this experience? What familiar pattern is returning for me to see? So can I identify a pattern? So let that situation become some sort of a mirror for helping you reflect on about your reactions and your emotional habits. So instead of seeing these adverse situations as a punishment, see them as information that you can then process to help you with some sort of adaptation, a psychological adaptation or psychological conditioning. So you can adapt these emotional patterns and prevent these patterns from repeating until they are understood properly. So choose one emotional reaction that arose when you were confronted with these adverse situations. So it's possible that you experience some anger or the initial moments of anger, maybe some insecurity or fear or jealousy or shame. And then ask yourself softly, what does this emotion need from me? And how can I respond instead of just reacting to it? So if there was anger that manifested in your mind stream in that situation, then let a new response arise in its place. So you can contrive a new response. If anger is what manifests, then try and replace it with patience. If there's jealousy that arises in your mind stream, then replace it with appreciation for other people's achievements. If there's anxiety that manifests in your mind stream, then you can cultivate some trust. So think about the different kinds of antidotes that you can manifest to transform your habitual emotional patterns. So the wheel of sharp weapons urges us to replace our old patterns with wiser ones. And this is how you can cultivate more deliberate kind of emotional responses. And this is about modulating, reshaping some of your responses to afflictions that arise in your mind stream. But ultimately, you need to kind of attack these afflictions at the root. And for that, you need wisdom. And you need to combine wisdom with a more expansive kind of mindset that does not, or rather emphasizes the well-being, the welfare of all other beings, not just yourself. So when you're having this adverse experience, think that there are other sentient beings also who experience similar kind of suffering. In fact, there could be countless other beings with similar or even more serious forms of suffering. So bring to mind someone who is suffering in their own way. And then silently say, remind yourself, just like me, this person wants happiness and wants to avoid pain. So may that person be free from this pain. May that person be free from that kind of suffering. And may that person have clarity to evolve wiser responses to these adverse situations. And then extend that mental attitude to include all sentient beings. And then also take on the responsibility to help other sentient beings to be free from all these pains and sufferings. So to deliver on that responsibility, you need some unique capability, and that capability is rooted in a specific kind of wisdom. So aspire for that state of wisdom. So you combine all this together and let your mind reflect these aspects of wisdom and concern for others' welfare. Now, that mental attitude manifests in your mental continuum spontaneously. That attitude would be called bodhicitta. So try and contrive this aspect in your mental continuum. Stay with that aspect of mind for some time. So let's just reinforce that mental attitude with a short bodhicitta prayer. So I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practices of giving and others' perfections, may I quickly attain the state of a completely enlightened Buddha so that I can work for the welfare of all sentient beings. Okay, so with that motivation, let's start our discussion of the text. Okay, so as I said, maybe just kind of discuss the outline of the text before we go into the discussion of each of those verses. So, broadly speaking, we can identify these distinct parts to the text. So there are 10 different parts to the text. So the text has a total of 127 verses. This version it says 119. So the different versions of the translation. So, anyways, there are 100 odd verses in this text, and if you were to identify the distinct parts, we can talk about these parts. So there's a part which deals with some verses which deal with homage or invocation. So the first two verses kind of deal with invocation and homage. And then there's a whole set of verses which help us with diagnosing the problem of our sufferings. As we just discussed, the root problem of our sufferings is the self-cherishing attitude. So this whole set of verses which talk about self-cherishing and how self-cherishing manifests in our regular behavior or regular conduct. And then it talks about how self-cherishing, along with the self-grasping that it is rooted in, it kind of drives us, forces us, propels us towards all kinds of different unwholesome actions through the three doors of our body, speech, and mind. And then the text says that once those unwholesome actions are enacted, it sets into motion these wheels of sharp weapons, which then come back to haunt us in the future. And that happens because of the activity of what is called the law of karma. So the text describes what the law of karma is. There are some verses which talk about the law of karma. And then, as I said, these weapons, so the text kind of very extensively talks about this metaphor of returning weapons. So there are several verses we talk about the different kinds of sharp weapons that we set into motion. So that's another distinct element that is described, that is discussed in the text. Then it presents us with different techniques on how we can reverse our ordinary attitude of self-cherishing and replace it with the other cherishing attitude. So the reversal of self-cherishing. So there are several verses that talk about how we can reverse our self-cherishing attitude. And then the text also talks about how we can transform or rather look at adversity as an educator, as an opportunity for us to gain insights from, and then bring that experience of adversity into the path and help us in advancing on the path to enlightenment. There's a very specific technique that is discussed in the text, which pertains to helping us with reversing our habit of forever blaming others. So just look into your own responses to adverse situations, and the instinct is always to blame something outside. It could be the environment, it could be some other person. So forever, we have this very strong instinct to kind of externalize the cause of our adverse experiences. But the reality is that it's internal. It's because of your own actions, because of your own afflictions, your own predispositions, your own negative karma that you're experiencing these adverse situations. So the text extensively talks about this technique of how we can invest in reversing this habit of blaming others. And then the text, as I said, this text builds on all the advice that is presented in the Bodhicharya Avatar, which talks essentially about how to cultivate bodhicitta. So this text also talks about how we can train our mind to cultivate bodhicitta. And then there's the final part, the concluding part, which talks about dedication and aspiration. So these are the main things that are discussed in the text. So the first part is the root of suffering. Self-cherishing is identification of the root of suffering. The second one is identifying how the law of karma operates. Third one is using the metaphor of the wheel of weapons to remind ourselves that our actions have consequences. Then a preparatory exercise where we need to look upon adversity as a teacher, then to cultivate this attitude of reversing our instinctively kind of wanting to blame others, then reversing our emotional experiences, reactions, and then how to cultivate bodhicitta. And then it talks about how to cultivate, or rather do proper dedications for the sake of the welfare of all sentient beings. So this is the general outline of the text. So as you see, these different elements, you could kind of categorize them into broadly 4 or 5 different categories. There's a causal, there's a group of causal elements. So there's the root cause that is discussed and the mechanism through which we have these adverse experiences. So what is the root cause that is identified here? So the self-cherishing attitude, right? And what is the mechanism through which this root cause is then presented to us in the form of suffering or adverse experiences? What is the mechanism?
Affliction, self-grasping ignorance, and negative karma.
Yes, so it's the law of karma that that results in us experiencing the consequences of actions rooted in self-cherishing. And then there's so this is the first part that deals with the causal elements. So there's the root of suffering, self-cherishing. There's the mechanism, the law of karma, which talks about how the experiences that we have are the effects of the causes, the karmic causes that we have created. And then it's done specifically through the metaphor of returning weapons. So these are the consequences of our actions. Then there's the part, the next group deals with the preparatory elements, which help us trigger a shift of view and help us kind of take enhanced responsibility for our actions. So the preparatory elements that are spoken of in this text are in the nature of instructions on how we can take adversity as a teacher, and then how we can reverse our attitude to forever blame others and the external environment. So that's the preparatory work that we need to do. Then the third group is the group of the transformational or the psychological elements, the internal adaptation that we need to do. So that is in the nature of reversing our emotional reactions.
I think transformation can adapting adversities into the path and everything. I mean, in terms of it seems like the path, I mean, of course, the path is good, but the process in day-to-day living is very hard. I mean, I have seen my own mother, for example, who has gone through a lot in her life and has been almost like she didn't speak about whatever she was going. It only made her more and more angry. She kind of said, oh, she was very understanding in the beginning and all that. But towards the end, and though she did a lot of prayers and all, it only made her very angry that she could not. I sometimes feel, would it have been okay if she had just said what she needed to? Because the attitude that, well, I should be understanding of them. I should be understanding of this situation. Maybe they were like this. Maybe they were going through this, which I find to be quite strong, internally strong. But perhaps, I don't know what didn't, and that attitude was genuine, I felt, in the beginning. But it made her so angry towards the end about everything. What could have been missing? That, I mean, that they are not able to convert it into them.
Yeah, it's a long process. Yeah. Takes lot of effort, lot of time to internalize all these instructions. But you need to ask yourself. So this text is talking about reversing our self-cherishing attitude. Uh, Ask yourself how the self-cherishing attitude has worked for you. If you think that it still works, then you'll look at your own experiences and you'll inevitably find that the self-cherishing attitude is kind of responsible for all the negative experiences that you're having.
Now, I understand that
Yeah.
is true. Also. But I'm talking about people who have shown so much of like fortitude and all that, and then taken a lot of humiliation maybe or experiences that have been traumatic and have said, okay, I understand the bigger picture. This is for the family, whatever they've done. But then it has not helped. Even that has not helped is what I'm in their case. So there is
You don't
something that
know.
they're not doing. It started by saying, I'm not cherishing myself, I'm doing this for the family. There, I'm concerned about them, I'm empathetic towards it. But somewhere it didn't work, is what I'm saying. Of course, my attitude
No, I
is
mean, we
not.
don't know whether I definitely don't think that it hasn't worked. It would have worked at some level. So all this, mm, the efforts that your mom took to be considerate in all these difficult situations, yeah, all those would have been kind of all those positive, wholesome actions would have been stored as positive imprints on the mind stream. So it's not like that hasn't worked, yeah. But it's always possible that there are stronger imprints in the form of imprints that you said that your mother still manifested anger in certain situations.
Like a metaphor for a lot
Yeah,
of women
I can
of
understand.
the
Yeah,
80s.
yeah.
And there was unhappiness,
Yeah.
deep-rooted unhappiness towards the end, and a regret that I should have said something, I should have done this. I did feel that there was anger.
But that's not a good regret. Yeah, you shouldn't regret having invested in wholesome actions. Yeah.
But then the empathy only extends to others, right? You don't empathize with yourself. You just sacrifice yourself for the sake of others, and that in turn makes you angry. That why didn't I extend the same empathy to myself? Why didn't I speak out?
See, inherent to all these arguments is the fact that yourself needs to be serviced. Yeah. We need to ask ourselves whether it needs to be serviced in the form or to the extent that it's being suggested here. Fundamental to all these techniques that we are discussing is the fact that the self as we conceive it does not exist. Yeah. There's a misconception that is driving our notion of self. Yeah. And also inherent to these arguments is the understanding that somehow when you're working for others, your welfare is getting compromised. But that's not true. It may appear that way, but that's not true. Yes.
I have been a lot of people can put themselves down to serve others. Actually, in some senses, like for example, mother and the family, it's a self-cherishing thing. Is immixed in it. It's not totally this thing. Others it extend to the whole world, but only the own children's welfare or the own husband's welfare. It's a lot mixed with attachment. They want something in return. They want money or provision, security in return.
Yeah.
And when they don't get that anger, so it's not without self-cherishing. It's not a pure kind of giving.
Yeah. So even in these situations, the person could be expecting some sort of validation of her sacrifices, his sacrifices. Yeah. So there is a craving for some recognition, and that wholesome action. It's possible that it is not rewarded in the form of recognition, but it will be rewarded in some other form. But in our minds, it's these kind of effects that we crave for: recognition, praise, acknowledgement that you've been the holier person, you've been the wiser person, you've been the more considerate person. Yeah. But just leave it at that. You've engaged in a considerate action, in a wholesome action. Its effect will be positive. How it manifests and at what time it manifests in the future is not certain. We don't know that. We just know the broad contours of the law of karma. But in order to know that when the fruit of that positive action will manifest, we need to be an omniscient. We need to have an omniscient mind. But it don't go unrewarded. Those actions will be rewarded. So we still kind of are expecting some sort of recognition, some sort of an acknowledgement of our virtuous actions, wholesome actions, and then when we don't get that, we get frustrated, and that leads to all these negative reactions. Then
so essentially human.
It is. I
mean, I have seen little children say, "Is it good? Have I done it well?" Immediate validation.
It is inherent to our nature. I mean, that's the reason it's very difficult to remove, and it's there because of conditioning for so many millions of lifetimes that we've left it unattended. Yeah. So right now we have the opportunity to kind of attack it in a logical, rational way with proper insights and wisdom. But just because we've got the right framework and the right attitude right now doesn't mean that it's going to vanish immediately. The seeds are plentiful from the past. And some of these seeds might be very intense, very powerful, very potent, and they will manifest in these experiences. So need to kind of give it some time.
But something of self-cherishing mind, gross level,
Yes.
easier.
Yes.
But there are self-cherishing mind which is very, very subtle, not subtle, very, very subtle. It is difficult to recognize that.
Yes.
And is there any technique how to identify that? Which is very subtle.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always the different kinds of levels of cherishing attitude that you can speak of. And as I discussed, what I gave you examples, how the different aspects of self-cherishing attitude, those are very gross examples. Yeah. But even a person who's invested like several lifetimes in this kind of practice will have subtle imprints of the self-cherishing attitude. Even a very accomplished yogi might have this subtle craving that his insights, his wisdom be recognized by the masses. So it's there. It's sort of present, mind stream at a subtle level, and for it to be removed completely, its root needs to be attacked, and its root, as I said, is the self-grasping view that we have, the view of self-grasping, and that needs to be kind of terminated, eliminated. So we need to kind of cultivate wisdom, which helps us attack that view, self-grasping. In terms of how we modulate our behavior and conduct, these mind training techniques.
Before attacking them, we need to identify, recognize that this is there is a program.
Precisely, and that's what we try to do in the meditation. Yeah. So you look at your own regular, ordinary experiences and see how self-cherishing attitude is visible there, and then look at what could be the root of this self-cherishing attitude. So yeah, it requires a lot of deliberate kind of contemplation, a lot of deliberation. Okay, so that was the third group that I was talking about, the psychological elements that we need to kind of cultivate in our mind stream. So reversing our emotional reactions and cultivating bodhicitta. So those are the essential aspects of the third group. And then the fourth element is the group of results. Yeah. So in that group, what the text talks about is essentially dedication. How you can dedicate the merit from your virtuous actions for the welfare of all beings. So these are the 4 or 5 important elements that are discussed in this text. Okay, so with that outline presented, we start discussion of the verses. So are we going to break for some time? Yeah. Okay, let's just do one or two verses from the text, and then we can break. Okay. So let's start with the first verse. So the wheel of sharp weapons, a Mahayana training of the mind. The name of this work is the wheel of sharp weapons, effectively striking the heart of the foe. I pay heartfelt homage to you, Yamantak. Your wrath is opposed to the great law of hearers. It's a metaphor. It's a personification of something. What could that be? It's our self-cherishing attitude, you know. So the wrath of Yamantak. Yamantak is the destroyer of Yama. Yama here is presented as, or rather, the internal self-cherishing attitude that we have is being personified and being described as Yama. So Yamantak's wrath is directed towards this great Lord of Death, or the self-cherishing attitude. So I pay heartfelt homage to you, Yamantak. Yamantak is the wrathful manifestation of Buddha Manjushri. So why is a wrathful manifestation being invoked here instead of the more peaceful word?
Afflictions are so strong and powerful.
Yeah.
They have to be vanquished.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the kind of metaphor, the metaphor of wheel that is being invoked here. So you need a powerful tool, and the tool is presented in the form of a wheel that can cut through the thicket of your deep-rooted, deep-seated afflictions. And those afflictions are then mastered over by the self-cherishing attitude. And the self-cherishing attitude acts through those afflictions to further one's own welfare. Yeah. So the weapon, you need a very strong weapon to cut through that, through the thicket of these afflictions, and then lend this self-cherishing attitude important. So that's the reason why a wrathful manifestation is being invoked here. So I pay heartfelt homage to you, Yamantak. Your wrath is opposed to the great Lord of Death. So maybe we'll pause here. Yeah, we'll continue with the discussion, the subsequent verses in 5 minutes, maybe. Yeah. 5 minutes. Pause this. You want me to pause this? All right. So verse number 2. There's a different translation.
Yes, even Venerable Legden mentioned it's not the same translation that you are.
Yeah. So the version that we have is 117 verses. This is 119. Anyways, okay. So in jungles of poisonous plants, struck the peacocks. Though medicine gardens of beauty lie near, the masses of peacocks do not find gardens pleasant, but thrive on the essence of poisonous plants. So this verse is kind of linked to verse number 2 also. Let's read the verse, the subsequent verse. In similar fashion, the brave bodhisattvas remain in the jungle of worldly concern. No matter how joyful this world's pleasure gardens, these brave ones are never attracted to pleasures, but thrive in the jungle of suffering and pain. Okay, so an alternative translation reads, when the peacocks roam the jungle of virulent poison, the flocks take no delight in gardens of medicinal plants, no matter how beautiful they may be, for peacocks thrive on the essence of virulent poison. So as you all know, peacocks have this unique ability to digest poison. Recently, I was visiting this campus we have in North Karnataka, Nangod. So there's this foundation called the Gelug International Foundation. They have an office there in a place called Gandhi in Munbod, one of the major monastic colleges. So they have a small office and a few quarters for monks to stay in it. And a biggish plot. There's reasonably dense vegetation all around. So there are lots of snakes apparently. And while I was there, I didn't see it myself. But there's this one snake which kind of goes for a walk, stroll uh, in the lawns, just in front of the main building of the foundation, and then returns back and it stays just below the office. And my friend, he kind of stays there. He shot a video of that thing. I was in the office working on something, so he showed me the video. I was wondering what the snake is searching for. This is when the snake goes out, there's a lot of flutter amongst the birds. They start screaming and yelling. So apparently it goes hunting for bird eggs, apparently. Or sometimes even climbs the trees and looks for younger birds. And then he told me that there are a lot of peacocks also that visit that plot. And I didn't spot, actually I spotted one. Lots of peacocks actually come there. And he's telling that they hunt the snakes. So the snake is a predator for the birds. The snake itself kind of becomes the hunted. And there's a bigger bird that comes and attacks the snake. I knew that, I'd heard that the peacocks can thrive on poison, but I didn't know that they feed on snakes, poisonous snakes. They feed on poisonous plants. But they also feed on poisonous snakes.
Whenever I saw a deer eat a snake.
Deer eat a snake?
Yes, I have a video.
Oh,
It's not air.
Deer eating snakes is, yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. So, okay, anyway, so the peacocks, they feed off poisonous toxic plants. Yeah. They have the option of feeding on, more pleasant flowers and fruits and medicinal plants, but instead they feed off the more toxic variety. So the toxic variety plants here is a metaphor for something which is part of our experience. It is a metaphor for the unpleasant experiences that we have in this cycle of suffering in samsara. Yeah. And the peacock is a metaphor for what? For the bodhisattvas, yeah. Bodhisattvas who, just like the peacocks, at times they have the option to abide in more peaceful, pure lands, pure Buddha fields, yeah, pure Buddha fields.
In Western culture, peacock is the symbol of pride and arrogance. Yeah, so they struck like a peacock, they say.
Okay.
Pride.
Yeah, it is different, yeah. So, so in Asian spiritual tradition, the peacock is a symbol of transformation. What kind of transformation? It eats or processes venom, toxins, in order to make its plumage more attractive, more beautiful. And the same kind of, so this is a metaphor for the Bodhisattva deeds, the enlightened deeds of the Bodhisattvas. So the Bodhisattvas also kind of on their own, of their own choice, of their own will, they take rebirth in samsara, and they kind of feed off these suffering experiences in order to advance their own spiritual practice. And it's that kind of courage, that kind of attitude that the author, Dharma Rakshita, Acharya Dharma Rakshita, wants us to cultivate. So he's imploring us to cultivate the same kind of bravery and courage that the Bodhisattvas display. So verse number 2, it says that just like the peacocks, when the heroes here are the Bodhisattvas, they roam the jungle of cyclic existence. So there's the jungle of cyclic existence and the jungle of the toxic plants. So just like the jungle of toxic plants, samsara is also a jungle of cyclic existence. Like the Buddha has mentioned in the Dhammapada or in the Udan work, he talks about how uh, he talks about three different kinds of weeds that make our environment toxic. So what are the weeds that he speaks about? So weeds, as we know, uh, if not controlled, they just prosper and just pervade the entire environment and just take over the entire environment. So similarly, if we let our mental continuum, we do not regulate it, we do not, keep it free of weeds, then the weeds will pervade our mental continuum. So what are the specific kind of weeds that the Buddha spoke of? So there are three weeds that he spoke of. So the weed of craving or desire, anger or hatred, and then delusion. So samsara is an effect of the growth of these weeds at an individual level as well as at the collective level. So these weeds, when they're left unattended, they take on the form of this jungle, the jungle of cyclic existence. So the bodhisattvas do not become attached to the garden of happiness and prosperity, which is a reference to the ordinary worldly pleasures. So they're not sucked into attending to their desires and cravings. They're not sucked into attending to their aversions or delusions. Instead, however appealing these desire or aversion or delusion may be, what they do is, just like the peacocks, they also thrive in the jungle of the unpleasant experiences of suffering. Why? Because it helps them advance spiritually. And what is their spiritual practice all about? So what is the goal that they want to actualize? It is to attain the state of enlightenment, but for the sake of all sentient beings. So with that goal in mind, providing the motivating force, they engage in this experience, engage with suffering, and advance their spiritual practices. So the heroes that are being referred to here are the bodhisattvas, and the jungle of cyclic existence is the world of suffering or world of dukkha, change and confusion. And the garden of happiness and prosperity that is being referred to here is worldly pleasures. Yeah. So the worldly pleasures are the garden of happiness and prosperity, but the bodhisattvas are not drawn towards these worldly pleasures. They keep their distance from these worldly pleasures. And how do they do that? It is by investing. Yes, so that is the foundation. Yeah. So they have, in order to actualize the bodhisattva's path, you still have to kind of have a proper understanding and training in the lower paths, the lesser vehicles, so to say. Yeah. So they would have to have invested in cultivating the attitude of renunciation to keep themselves away from being sucked into pursuit of worldly pleasures. So that's verse number 1 and 2. So verse number 3. Let's look at verse number 3, the first part of it. So we spend our whole life in the search for enjoyment, yet tremble with fear at the mere thought of pain. Thus, since we are cowards, we are miserable still. So, just the first part of this verse, an alternative translation says, therefore, it is due to cowardice that persons avidly pursue their own happiness and so come to suffer. So this is a description of our, mental setup and our attitudes, our conduct. So we are being described as cowards, and out of cowardice, we pursue worldly pleasures. We are kind of engaged exclusively in the in worldly pleasures, yeah, for our own happiness. And yet, in spite of wanting happiness, what is it that we encounter? We keep experiencing suffering. So we kind of, although we want and desire happiness, we distancing ourselves from happiness in reality. And why is that? Because we are acting out of cowardice. Why and how? It's because we are forever being dominated by our actions are dominated by the self-cherishing attitude. So the cowardice of self-cherishing is what is being referred to here. It says, since we are cowards because we are entirely dominated by the self-cherishing attitude. And what is it that we fear? So cowards are fearful, right? They're insecure all the time. So what is it that the cowards fear? So the cowards fear change. They fear discomfort. They fear criticism. They fear pain. And they also fear the suffering of others because it makes them uncomfortable. So in order to kind of get rid of this cowardice, it would require a lot of effort and self-sacrifice. And what is the cowardly act that the cowards engage in? Yes, pursuing the worldly pleasures. So the avid pursuit of one's own happiness at the expense of maybe even others' happiness. So it is the act of kind of confining ourselves or shrinking our field of concern. Our field of concern is forever kind of excluding the other. Yeah. In some sense, maybe it kind of extends a little beyond oneself when it extends to our family members or dear ones. But even there, if the situation is particularly kind of adverse, even there, kind of automatically kind of want to maximize your own welfare, even at the cost of sacrificing your own family members' well. So your self-cherishing attitude is forever kind of shrinking your sphere of concern. Yeah? So that's what the self-cherishing attitude propels you towards. It propels you towards all these cowardly acts. So you're kind of forever trapped in this avid pursuit of our own happiness. But this pursuit of happiness is doomed for some very fundamental reasons. So why is it doomed? Why is our happiness?
It's contaminated.
Yes, contaminated. But why is it contaminated? You're right. It's
Temporary. It's not long-serving. It's not deep-rooted.
Yes.
It's not subtle.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it is we're doomed in our pursuit of happiness because this happiness that we seek is impermanent. Yeah. So our pursuit of happiness, the happiness that we pursue, is all contaminated happiness, as Deepti mentioned. So this happiness is impermanent. So worldly happiness is it is conditioned, it is temporary, and it can be easily lost. Yeah. The happiness that we pursue is essentially suffering of change. So it's kind of it appears to us as happiness, but it's bound to take on the form of a new kind of suffering. Yeah. So if there's physical pain that we are experiencing, we alter our physical posture. It provides us with some relief, and then we think of that relief as happiness. Yeah. But if it were genuine happiness, however much it is kind of prolonged, it should just yield happiness. But the altered posture ultimately becomes painful for us again, becomes uncomfortable for us, and we want to alter that too. So in that sense, that relief was temporary. It is impermanent, and that kind of describes whatever worldly happiness that we seek. Any happiness that we seek is impermanent in this sense. And suffering is the inevitable result because it is ultimately rooted in this self-cherishing or the self-grasping that we have in our mental continuum. So suffering is the inevitable result of our actions. So this is a paradox. Although we want happiness, our actions are kind of just distancing ourselves from happy experiences. Yeah, it is short-sighted. So it's a paradox that we need to attend. So this verse kind of is describing this paradox. It is revealing this paradox of self-cherishing. So the attempt to secure happiness for oneself is the very reason or the very act, the very cause that ensures one's continued entrapment in the cycle of suffering. Yeah. So this is what the first part of this verse is about. As opposed to our attitude, the attitude of the Bodhisattva is slightly different. So they courageously embrace suffering, both their own as well as the suffering of others, and they willingly take on hardship for the sake of others' welfare. Why? Because through their actions, through their engagement with suffering of others, there's this chance of purifying their past negative karma. So it can be a positive action. So it lead to purification of past actions, past negative karma. But it also helps purification at a more fundamental level. It helps them subdue their self-cherishing, their attachment, their self-clinging, or their craving, their aversions. So it is helping them in the form of weakening the seeds of these afflictions. It is also helping them in purifying the effects of the negative karma. So it's helping at two different levels. And that's the reason why they willingly, voluntarily want to engage in experience of suffering. So this verse is essentially teaching us the self-protective mechanism, which is triggered by our self-cherishing attitude, where we seek personal comfort forever. But it also tells us that it is fundamentally flawed, it is doomed, because the happiness that we seek is impermanent. So it also tells that, like the Bodhisattvas, we should be working towards true safety and true happiness, which is found in not avoiding suffering, but taking it head on, facing it with courage and with compassion. So that's first part of verse 3. The second part of the verse says, but the brave bodhisattvas accept suffering gladly and gain from their courage a true lasting joy. So an alternative translation says, and it is due to heroism as opposed to cowardice. It is due to heroism that our heroes, the bodhisattvas, willingly take the suffering of others onto themselves. And because of that, they're always happy. So heroism and bodhisattvas' happiness, this is what the second part of verse number 3 talks about. So the verse talks about the heroism of compassion, the desire to take on the suffering of others. So it also, the bodhisattva's heroism is being defined here in this verse. What exactly is the definition that is being referred to here in this verse?
The aspect that they venture,
Uh-huh.
not just aspire.
Okay. So when you talk about heroes, what is the attribute that you...
Like, despite adversities, you strive.
Generally in conventional terms, when you talk about a hero, what is the quality that you attribute the hero?
Victorious.
Yeah, so bravery, courage. Yeah. So what is the specific kind of courage that is being referred to here? It's not physical courage, right? Sorry? Yes, so there's a spiritual courage that is being referred to here. So the specific kind of spiritual courage that is being talked about here is exchanging, or rather being willing to take on the suffering of other sentient beings. So the spiritual courage to face and engage with self-concern. Our attitude right now is to kind of recoil back. When we see suffering or adversity, our own suffering, even with our own suffering, we don't want to kind of confront it head on. We don't want to take it head on, let alone, dealing with the suffering of others. Our natural tendency is to kind of retreat into self-concern. It is the opposite of cowardice that our attitude is described as cowardice, but the attitude of the bodhisattvas is that of heroism, because they're willing to engage with suffering. And then the heroic act that is being referred to here is the willingness to take on the suffering of others onto themselves. So it is the ultimate antidote to self-cherishing. And it is the core practice of the bodhisattvas who have cultivated bodhicitta, or would be bodhisattvas who want to be bodhisattvas and have to cultivate bodhicitta in order to do that. So, so this verse, as we mentioned, it talks about this paradoxical happiness that we pursue, and the genuine happiness that the bodhisattvas pursue. So that's verse number 3. So let's look at the subsequent verse number 4. Yeah, go ahead.
Bodhisattva showing the braveness, right?
Yes.
There might be a situation where a critical thinking is required for a bodhisattva.
Yes.
He can't just go blindly and show the courage.
Yes.
How would you understood, right?
Yes.
There might be a situation or like a war or something.
Yeah.
Where he needs to act very diplomatically rather than just going away. He knows that he might be destroyed, and along with him, others also will be destroyed. Yeah,
a bodhisattva will not care about any loss that he personally would incur, even if it is
physical thinking also.
Say a bodhisattva, technically a bodhisattva is a person who has cultivated bodhicitta, and bodhicitta mind has an aspect of wisdom to it. There's an aspect of discernment, and this motivation or the aspiration to become enlightened. But there's a wisdom aspect associated with it. So, the discernment that is required, that is inherent to his responses. So he will be able to kind of deploy that insight, that wisdom, that power to discern, discriminate, and then evolve a potent kind of response in that situation. But he would not be deterred by any thought of self-preservation. If it requires him to sacrifice his physical person, the bodhisattva will be willing to do that. He has to be diplomatic. I'm not sure whether bodhisattva would worry about these kind of worldly.
Let's take that to be our holiness only, right? The way he handled as a refuge taking. With critical thinking,
yes,
he saved a lot of people's lives.
Yes. Because the wisdom that you're referring to here, the response was kind of pervaded with insight, and insight about what? The long-term welfare of the people of Tibet. So a bodhisattva would, a bodhisattva would have wisdom characterizing his responses, his actions. So it's not just blind sacrifices. That's right. So when you talk about bodhicitta and compassion, very often in the text, there's a reference to discerning compassion, and then the blind compassion that you're talking about. So blind compassion, for example, would propel a mother who sees her child drowning in a overflowing river. Instinctively, she'll jump to save the child, but she doesn't have the capacity to save the child. So that compassionate action is not kind of characterized by discernment. Whereas the bodhisattva will kind of want to cultivate capacity to be able to even respond to these kind of situations positively. So there's an element of discernment of wisdom that the Bodhisattva will kind of factor in to his actions. Yeah. Okay, so verse number 4. Now, desire is the jungle of poisonous plants here. Only brave ones like peacocks can thrive on such fare. If cowardly beings like crows were to try it because they are greedy, they might lose their lives. So again, there's a reference to peacocks and crows here. So who do you think are the crows and the peacocks that are being referred to here?
Crows would be the people searching for personal nirvana or happiness. Or
Yes.
right.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And peacocks would be the mind practice.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, you're right. So the crows are people like us, yeah. And the bodhisattvas are the peacocks that are being referred to here, yeah. But the description as crows, does it extend to non-Mahayana practitioners in its entirety? Would it include, for example, the Arhants, the Shravakas, and the Pratyek Buddhas?
They are
They're not Mahayana.
Yes. So
They are abiding.
yes.
I think
Yeah. Yeah. So the reference as crows would include the practitioners who are practicing the. Yeah. So only those beings who are practicing the Bodhisattva path are the peacocks that are being referred to here. Everyone else is crow-like. Yeah. Everyone else is crow-like, and the reasons why all of us, of course, fall in the crow-like category. I don't know about you, but at least I do. It's only the bodhisattvas that kind of go beyond this category and are described as peacocks. So now here, desire is like a jungle of virulent poison. The hero, like the peacock, masters it. The coward, like the crow, perishes. So again, there's a reference to a certain kind of heroism. There's a reference to a choice. Yeah. The crow exercises a certain kind of choice. The peacock exercises a different kind of choice. Yeah. So, and then the verse also talks about desire as being the poison here. So, how is desire described as the poison? Why is desire considered to be the poison?
It clouds you from seeing that you are grasping.
Yeah.
And you're only obsessed with yourself.
Yeah. So the desire is being described as a jungle of virulent poison. So it is a particularly potent kind of affliction. It is very dangerous. It's very pervasive. And it is primarily what is responsible for us to be bound, trapped in this toxic environment that we describe as samsara. And there's a specific kind of desire that is responsible for it. What is that specific desire?
to exist.
Yes, yeah, to kind of perpetuate our existence in samsara. So we're forever kind of working on that. We're reinforcing that desire, the desire to perpetuate our existence in samsara. Just examine your own thought process instinctively. We may have some virtuous thoughts, but even those virtuous thoughts could be anchored, rooted, ultimately in this desire to perpetuate our existence in samsara. So desire is therefore considered to be a particularly violent, very toxic kind of affliction. The hero here is like the peacock, and he's attained the peacock's mastery, rather. So how is it that the bodhisattvas have attained the mastery of the peacock. It's because just like the peacock, it does not avoid poison. The bodhisattvas also do not avoid suffering experiences. They don't mind engaging with suffering experiences. So just like the peacocks, the bodhisattvas also kind of consume, in a way, suffering experiences. And then they transmute those suffering experiences and turn those suffering experiences into something that is more meaningful, more beautiful. So the peacock takes in, ingests in toxins and poisons and transmutes the poison into something that is more beautiful. Yeah. So the hero does not try to annihilate desire by retreating from desire. It kind of the hero wants to engage with desire, and they master it by engaging with it, yeah, and transform the energy of this desire, which leads to grasping and and craving, and then self-clinging, and then they transform it into something more meaningful, like bodhicitta. Yeah. So the mastery here means using that energy from desire, attachment, using that energy generated by desire and aversion and suffering as fuel for the path instead of being consumed by it. But if cowards like us were to imitate that, what would be the outcome? So that would be quite perilous for the crow to try and imitate the peacock. The crow is going to inevitably fall sick, take ill. Yeah, but
So like
we all we can call us as to be bodhisattvas. We're imitating bodhisattvas, but a meaningful imitation in the sense that we're trying to cultivate bodhicitta. There's some sort of contrived bodhicitta in our mind stream. It may not be the spontaneous bodhicitta that is required for us to qualify as bodhisattvas. But even with that contrived bodhicitta, that should give us enough security to try and emulate the bodhisattvas. But without that kind of motivation, which is what even the Shravakas and the Pratyek Buddhas, they do not have even this contrived bodhicitta in their minds. So if they were to, try and imitate the peacocks, then they're going to be completely consumed by the poison, and they're going to that action of theirs is going to lead to death. What kind of death would that be? I mean, what kind of death is being spoken of here?
rebirth itself.
Yes, yeah. So they're seeking rebirth. They're seeking kind of liberation from rebirth, the cycle of rebirth in samsara. But if they were to kind of try and emulate the bodhisattva without this attitude of bodhicitta, without investing in cultivating bodhicitta, all that it will do is, because they don't have the right tools to transmute desire, the poison of desire, it will just propel them back into samsara. So that will cause the death of their liberated life, the life of liberation that they seek. Yeah, the existence of liberation, the experience of liberation that they seek. So the crow, if it were to try and emulate the peacock, it would be quite perilous. So this is what the verse number 4 talks about. So we've run out of time, so we'll pause here. So verse number 5 onwards, we'll continue in the subsequent session. Okay, so let's just end with a short dedication. This is a simple dedication. So just take a moment to reflect on what we've discussed in the session today. Just close your eyes and just reflect on whatever we've discussed today. So we can be sure that we accumulate some merit through our participation in this discussion. So it's nice to just direct that merit to a positive cause. So let's all direct that merit to our ultimate enlightenment. And also make a wish that other sentient beings also are presented with this opportunity to advance on this path towards enlightenment. And through our positive actions, whatever merit we've accumulated, that creates the right energy for them to be presented with these opportunities. Let's dedicate this merit for the cultivation of the mind of enlightenment in our mind streams. So may the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that is not arise in my mind stream, and not diminish. And may that Bodhicitta which is arisen in mind stream not diminish but prosper and increase more and more. Okay, so I stop here. Thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. And tomorrow morning, we have a program called Bodhisattva Way of Life. We are going to, it's a program that's open to beginners and advanced students alike. And it's a long running program where we'll be understanding a text by Acharya Shantideva. We are still in the beginning parts of it. So please join us tomorrow, and do tell your friends and anyone who is interested in this, and please bring them along. It will run from 10 in the morning till 12:30 with a small break in between. Thank you all so much for coming. And thank you all online, wherever you are coming from. Thank you so much. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Stop this.
I will stop it.
Thank you.